the first Indianapolis-based Green Sanctuary Conference. And finally, final footnote, she was instrumental in the beginning of Who's Your Faith, Power, and Light. In a few moments, Janet will offer some encouraging insights concerning hope and climate change. So, if you are visiting this morning, we're glad you're here with us. People of all ages are joyfully welcomed in the service, and nursery care is available if you need that option. I invite everyone here to please complete a connection card. I didn't bring one with me, but they're at the end of your pew. This little card helps us know how best to stay connected and support you on life's journey. And our caring team is an extension of the ministry team and is here to support you. And you can reach them by writing on your connection card, calling the church office, or by email at pastoralcare@allsoulsindy.org. Our Soul Matters theme this month is Heritage. Check in the know to get a packet so you can engage with the materials at home or at All Souls, in person or online. Now I'd like for Nancy Olson to provide a few announcements.
Good morning. Oh, a couple things. First of all, Fall Fest. It's Fall Fest. You'll see some flyers back there. We have a team putting this together, and they are psyched. They have some great activities planned. It's going to be October 28th. We have things for kids, things for adults, an evening of bonfire for other folks, or for older folks, and we're all really looking forward to it. We're inviting the community, so we're getting the word out. Dorian, they've made these beautiful flyers. They're out there if you'd like to take any around and share. And also, we would love to see you there helping half an hour, an hour. There are just so many ways for us to come together. And honestly, I really think it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to give us an opportunity to just be together in some fun ways. So Sign Up Genius, Amanda has put together a Sign Up Genius. Get on there, let us know when you're coming and how you might like to be involved. Secondly, in November, there is the Fall Into Art, and Gabe and that team is organizing an amazing event on art from all different areas, music, visual arts, some fun things, and that is going to be on November 12th, and there's a call out for artists. For those of you who are artistic, who've been painting, who've been weaving, who've been singing, who've been writing, contact Gabe, because he would love to hear from you, and he'd love to know how to include you in that day. And lastly, today, today is Clergy Appreciation Day. Yeah. Yeah. Reverend Katie is not with us in body. She is off doing other things and learning how to serve us as best she can. So we have a big card back here that we would love for you to sign afterwards. We'll make sure she gets it. And for those of you online want to send a card, let her know your appreciation for her being here, you can send that to the church, and then we're going to put all those together and give them to her when she returns in a week. All right. Thank you.
As we begin our time together, we acknowledge the land itself and those who have sustained it through the generations. We are upon the unceded land of the Miami, Kaskaskia, Shawnee, and Kickapoo people who were pushed from their land and whose children were stolen. As we strive to be a community of justice, may we continue to find ways to make reparations. I offer you this poem by Emily Dickinson entitled Hope is the Thing with Feathers. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I have heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never, in extremity, it asked a crumb of me. Let us enter now into a time of worship.
Ada is going to come up and light our chalice for us. Good to go, Ada. Thank you. So the ritual of lighting our chalice reminds us to continually renew our promise to live into our covenant, to put love into action, and to live out this community of love and justice that we aim to be. So please rise in body and spirit as we say these adapted chalice lighting words that from James Villa Blake that we have been saying, these very same words, since 1903. They're printed in the order of celebration in both Spanish and English, and we'll speak them in Spanish first and then in English. And if you're with us online, please let us know in that chat where you are lighting your chalice from. Do you want to stand up here while we say the covenant? Great, come right with us here. Amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley, vivir juntos en la paz, buscar la verdad en el amor, y nos ayudarnos, este es nuestro pacto. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our covenant. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay. Well, when this service was being planned, Reverend Katie sent me this note, and she said, you know, perhaps there's a story about, a hopeful story about how youth might be involved in climate change and being active in that. And sure, yeah, of course, we know some youth that have been involved. We know about Greta from Sweden, who's been very, very involved from a young age. Some of you may not have known that she started this like when she was like 10 or 11. She was encouraging her parents to become vegan, to not fly anywhere, to upscale. And one thing led to another, and she certainly has been a force to reckon with. She has organized the globe and spoken to all kinds of folks. So certainly we have her as a model. And then recently in Montana, there was the example of the 17, was it 16? I think it was 16 youth who filed suit against the state of Montana, because in that constitution it says that they will provide a clean and healthy environment for all of its citizens. And the way some of these companies were going about business there in Montana, they were not. The legislature in Montana and the leaders were not protecting citizens' right to a clean and healthy environment. And they won that case. And I think it's the first case won like that. Is that correct? Yeah. So that was that. So there were these instances. But, you know, I did what we all do anymore. I Googled youth climate activists. Many, so many youth, honest to Pete. I mean, we know how aware our youth are. We have heard from some of them, and we know, but there are so many. And you know, they are all ages. They are 6 and 11 and 15 and 20, and some of them started years ago, and now they're 28 and 25 and 30. But they are so active, and they're from us all over the globe. Australia and Belgium and Nigeria and Kenya and Marshall Islands and UK and the First Nations in Canada and all over the globe. India, all over the globe. Young people are rising up. They're speaking out. They're saying enough on some of this. And they are doing things like they're doing TED Talks. They're organizing protests in their communities. They are talking to leaders. They have come to the table at the UN and at the peace summits and at legislatures, and they are talking and they are saying this, like Fridays for Future. This is our future, and they are asking people to wake up, look up, and see what is going on. And they care about the Amazon, they care about our ocean, they care about the forests, they care about plastic, they care about the earth, they care about the little beings that we share this earth with. They care about so many things, and they are acting on those, and they are bringing change. The other thing I just also was lifted up about is how many organizations these youth have started. I mean, honest, actual organizations, from the young man, I think it was Nigeria, could have been Kenya, who started an organization called Trees for Goals. And he, of course, is a footballer, is a soccer player, and he started this organization, and every time he got a goal, they would donate 11 trees and plant them. Over 1,000 trees have been planted from his goals. So that's a small one. And then another organization, which I actually just joined their mailing list, it's called Re-Earth. Oh, let me get this right. It's called Re-Earth. Yes, Re-Earth Initiative. Re-Earth Initiative. And they are educating people, and they have a toolkit. They have resources on their website, and they've collaborated with another organization, and you can get on there, youth can get on there, and you can do a little quiz like, I'm older, I own my home, I live in a certain part of the country, I would like to know what kinds of things I could do to help the environment, both personally and systemically. And then you fill this out, ding, 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 and at the end it comes up and gives you these ideas. Here are some things you can do personally in your daily life, and here are some things you can do to help change systemically. These young people are amazing, and they are smart, and they are kind, and they care about inclusion, and care about all of the people and all of the beings, and they have a lot of energy. And I think for Ada and our young people to go to some of these websites, it's inspiring, and it'll inspire youth of what they're already thinking about. And for myself, I'm like, how can I support these youthful organizations? You know, what can I do? What is it that, not only that I can do to sign up to help, to make my pledge to the universe, but what can I do to support these young people with their energy and their passion to care for the earth? How can we partner together? So that's what I go away with for today. Thank you.
Please join me in taking a few moments to note that which is currently bringing sorrow or joy to our community. We send healing thoughts to Jerry Dreesen, who is recovering at home after a brief hospital stay resulting from a fall. We're holding Bill Forehand, who is with us actually this morning, and his family in our hearts as they grieve the loss of their mother and Bill's beloved wife, Jenny, who passed away October 3rd. In our wider circle of concern, we are mindful of those in our midst who are experiencing broken spirits, heartache, or other difficulty in their lives.
How long that was, that story.
May you be granted healing and restoration. Our hearts are particularly heavy this morning as we learn of the unfathomable tragedy unfolding in the Middle East. I invite us now to enter a brief moment of silence in contemplation and reflection. Thank you, all souls, for your love and concern for one another. May all hearts be restored.
You would not believe your eyes if 10,000 fireflies lit up the world as I fell asleep. 'Cause they fill the open air and leave teardrops everywhere. You'd think me rude, but I would just stand and stare. I'd like to make myself believe that planet Earth turns slowly. It's hard to say that I'd rather stay awake when I'm asleep, 'cause everything is never as it seems. 'Cause I get 1,000 hugs from 10,000 lightning bugs as they try to teach me how to dance. A foxtrot above my head, a sock hop beneath my bed, a disco ball is just hanging by a thread. I'd like to make myself believe that planet Earth turns slowly. It's hard to say that I'd rather stay awake when I'm asleep, 'cause everything is never as it seems when I fall asleep. Leave my door open just a crack, 'cause I feel like such an insomniac. Why do I tire of counting sheep when I'm far too tired to fall asleep? To 10 million fireflies, I'm weird 'cause I hate goodbyes. I got misty eyes as they said farewell, farewell. But I'll know where several are if my dreams get real bizarre, 'cause I saved a few and I keep them in a jar. I'd like to make myself believe that planet Earth turns slowly. It's hard to say, but I'd rather stay awake when I'm asleep, 'cause everything is never as it seems when I fall asleep. I'd like to make myself believe that planet Earth turns slowly. It's hard to say, but I'd rather stay awake when I'm asleep, 'cause everything is never as it seems when I fall asleep. I'd like to make myself believe that planet Earth turns slowly. It's hard to say, but I'd rather stay awake when I'm asleep, because my dreams are bursting at the seams.
Thank you, Marianne. It's hard to beat fireflies, isn't it? Good morning to everybody who's here and who's watching online. It's a real honor for me to be part of this service and speak with you this morning about an issue that affects every single person on the planet and the billions of people yet to come. Although honestly, after Nancy's message, I could pretty much just go home, I think, because she said it all. This is an issue that All Souls has been engaged with for years and is very focused on now. I know I'm speaking to people who do not need to be convinced that human activity through the burning of fossil fuels has already altered and will continue to alter the Earth's climate. For the past 6 million or so years, our climate has made planet Earth super comfortable and conducive to survival of the human species, not to mention all the other species, plant and animal, that we share the world with. But that's changing. As John said, I've spent much of my one wild and precious life, as Mary Oliver says, working in government and the nonprofit and academic worlds on issues related to reducing pollution, especially air pollution, and on climate change policy. Over the years, air pollution policy has largely turned into climate change policy, and that's because emissions of greenhouse gases, mostly from the development and burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas, are causing the temperature to rise with changes in climate and weather that we're now seeing frequently. These include more catastrophic storms, rising sea levels, drought, wildfires, and changes in habitat for plants and animals. These issues have described both my personal and my professional life. I've seen and been a part of progress and delay, breakthrough and setback. I've been part of efforts to regulate our way to reduced use of fossil fuels, efforts to encourage economic systems to encourage less coal and oil, and efforts to use incentives like tax credits. I've tried, as many of you have, to use moral argument to find common ground with people who have very different perspectives or priorities. I've experienced emotional highs and lows. I've felt guilty, like I'm not doing enough, because I still eat the occasional hamburger. Yes, I do. I've felt satisfaction with choices that John and I have made, like the solar panels on our house, or replacing the grass in our yard with native plants, not just because it's good for the planet in a little teeny tiny way, but because it's also a pleasure for us right now to see the flowers and the bees and to not have to mow. And I've felt like there's much more we should be doing. We stand here today with news of disasters and tragedies around the world that certainly have been exacerbated by the climate changes that are the result of too much greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Every day, there are stories about disasters around the world, species that are being driven to extinction, heat records being broken year after year, and countries not doing enough to slow the continued buildup of greenhouse gases. I read lots of news about the impacts of climate change. One thing I learned recently that reflects the increase in wildfires that has really stuck with me is that the state of California used to be able to share its expensive wildfire fighting equipment with Australia, the big expensive things, because their wildfire seasons happened at different times during the year. That's not the case anymore. It's wildfire season in California and Australia pretty much all of the time, so they can't share that anymore. For me, these stories are getting harder and harder to look at and absorb. When every day we hear that heat records are being broken, they lose their impact. And I just can't bring myself to look at pictures of dying coral reefs. It's just too sad, and it seems too final. But even with all that's happening, with talk of tipping points, commitments unmet, carbon emissions increasing, I have two key messages for you today. First, I am hopeful, probably more hopeful than I've ever been since I started thinking about these issues seriously. And second, I'm hopeful mostly because of people like you and the things you're doing right here and right now to address this existential threat. The great folk musician and activist Pete Seeger said, "The key to the future of the world is finding the optimistic stories and letting them be known." So I want to tell you 6 reasons why, at this moment in time, I'm hopeful that the world is on a path to actually addressing climate change. And along the way, I'll try to explain some of the concepts and terms that get tossed around in climate talk. I'll try not to use too many statistics, But when I do, my facts come from government sources like the U.S. Energy Information Agency and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So let me start with one explainer. You may hear people say greenhouse gases, you may people hear say carbon pollution or variants of these terms. So how do we parse through all that? Climate change is due to a buildup in the atmosphere of several gases that help trap the sun's heat on the Earth's surface. CO2, or carbon dioxide, is the most plentiful of these gases, but there are others. Notably, there's methane, which comes from natural gas, decomposing organic matter, and animal manure. There's some other chemicals that we use in refrigerants and certain kinds of foams, like foam that's used to put out fires, that are much less in quantity but very high in potency. So greenhouse gases is the most accurate term, but if you say carbon pollution, nobody's gonna trot you off to climate jail. So here are my 6 reasons. The first reason I'm hopeful is that international efforts around climate change are robust. We often say, think globally and act locally, and I agree with that for most of us, but some people do, in fact, act globally. They convene every year to make progress on countries' individual commitments to greenhouse gas reduction, to develop and adopt international standards to monitor progress, and to advance our scientific understanding of what's happening to our oceans, our weather patterns, and our communities. Many of you know that in 1994, following the climate summit in Rio de Janeiro, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change came into being. The convention's stated objective is to stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations to a level that will prevent dangerous interference with the global climate system, and do it on a time frame that allows the world to adapt to the climate changes that will occur despite our best efforts. The convention also recognized that developed nations were chiefly responsible for emissions of carbon dioxide and other climate-changing gases, and developing nations, the poorest nations, though contributing in minuscule amounts to the problem, were in many cases at greatest risk from sea level rise, increased temperatures, drought, and other climate impacts. There have been many twists and turns since Rio. Every year, countries come together for their annual Conference of the Parties. That's what COP stands for, if you've heard that. A big turning point was the COP in Paris in 2015, where countries agreed to a specific new goal and new, more acceptable approaches for countries to put forward their own commitments. First, the countries agreed to a goal for keeping global temperature change to well under 2 degrees Celsius. That's about 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit from pre-industrial times, and really strive for 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you hear 1.5 degrees, that's what that's talking about. This seems tiny, doesn't it seem so small? You hardly put on a sweater if the temperature changes that much. But we know that globally, small changes make a huge difference, and we can see that from the changes that are already happening. The second thing that the Paris Climate Accord did, as it's known, is change how countries approach their commitments to greenhouse gas reduction. Instead of setting global targets that apply to countries equally, they adopted an approach where each one would come forward with its own commitment, as ambitious as possible, and then come back every 5 years to hopefully increase their level of ambition. Now, one theory I have for why the Paris COP was successful was all the pastry and French wine that was available to the negotiators. It was everywhere. But if that's what it takes, that's what it takes, right? So how are we doing? Well, the key metrics that everyone watches, global temperatures, global emissions, the level of carbon in the atmosphere, have not yet taken the downward turn that we need to see. There is still good news. The principles of the Paris Accord are still in place, and countries have not walked away. Well, the US did kind of walk away for a couple of years, but we are back now. And while it's clear that we and others need to do way more, way faster to meet the goal of staying under that 2.7 degree temperature change, reductions are indeed happening across the globe, especially in developed countries that emit the most. The United Nations recently issued a report whose key finding was that the Paris Agreement has driven near universal climate action by setting goals and sending signals to the world regarding the urgency of responding to the climate crisis. In the US, emissions are on a downward trend. The US tracks emissions of carbon dioxide from various sources, primarily electricity generation, transportation, industry, and commercial and residential buildings. Those are our biggest sources of these gases in the country. From 1990 to about 2005, emissions in the US were going up. And then, since then, they have been going down, mostly because power plants that burn coal have been closing. Total US emissions have decreased by 2.3% from 1990 to 2021. We have a long way to go, but people are still at the table working at it. My second reason to be hopeful is that in the US, climate policy is the strongest it has ever been. This administration's goal is to achieve a 50% reduction from 2005 levels in economy-wide net greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, not very many years from now. So let me explain this a little bit more. The term net greenhouse gas emissions means that we count both emissions and what are known as carbon sinks. A sink is a place or a feature that absorbs carbon dioxide. The ocean is a sink. Forests are sinks. Agriculture can be a sink as plants draw carbon out of the air. So in the US, we track not only how much greenhouse gases are emitted by power plants, transportation, et cetera, we also track how much land is forested and used for agriculture, and that is our net greenhouse gas number. There is no question that a 50% decrease is a very bold goal. Right now, the federal government is using every carrot and stick it has. And with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act last year, the carrots are vastly more meaningful than they've ever been. So here are a few examples, and I'll start with the carrots because that's more fun and they're orange. One is money for states, large metropolitan areas, and Native American tribes to develop climate plans, and then more money to help fund major projects to implement those plans. Both the state of Indiana and Indianapolis have signed up to do plans. Also, there's money to replace heavy-duty diesel engines with electric vehicles. This includes school buses, trucks of all sizes, equipment at ports across the country, and other heavy-duty vehicles. There's money to build charging stations, thousands of them across the country, to support all of us wanting to buy an electric vehicle but nervous about how far we can go before we need to recharge. That's called range anxiety, and John and I have it. Policies intended to spur the market towards clean energy. The federal government, I didn't know this, the federal government is the largest purchaser of goods and services in the world. There are requirements now in place for federal agencies to purchase more electric vehicles, build climate-friendly buildings, and produce and buy renewable energy. These steps will help bring prices down and push the market forward so that it will become cheaper for the rest of us. There are also tax credits that encourage consumers who buy electric vehicles and manufacturers who invest in climate-friendly products and manufacturing processes. There are also some sticks. EPA is developing new regulations for power plants and motor vehicles. The Department of Energy is developing efficiency standards for appliances and energy use. There are revised regulations that require impacts on climate change be considered when major infrastructure projects are undergoing environmental reviews. The cool thing is that these carrots and sticks support each other, and they can lead to greater ambition. The regulations are based on the available of clean technology, so the faster that technology develops, the more the regulatory goals can take that into account when they set the standards. With all of these tools, the Energy Information Agency predicts that by 2030, remember that's the year of the president's goal, energy-related emissions will fall to 25 to 38% below 2005 levels. That's amazing, but we still have a long way to go. Reason number 3, the private sector. It is responding. Government cannot do this alone. To reduce greenhouse gas emissions meaningfully, we need to generate more energy by renewable fuels and less from fossil fuels, whether that's coal or natural gas for our power plants, or gasoline and diesel fuel for our cars, trucks, buses, trains, planes, construction, mining equipment, and anything else that moves with an engine. The transition is really, really happening now. The cost of renewable energy is going down, and the cost of coal-based electricity is going up. Power sector emissions in the US are 22% lower, they were in 2021, than they were in 1990. Wind and solar energy are an increasing wedge in that pie chart of where our energy comes from. In order to keep this moving, though, we need better systems for energy storage, like great big batteries that can store energy generated by the wind and the sun for use later when it's dark. We also need to address our transmission system across the country so we can get energy generated from those wind farms and those massive solar arrays to the customers. The transportation sector is increasingly running on electricity. More people are buying electric vehicles. More and more EV infrastructure is being built on highways in cities and towns. School districts across the country are using federal grant dollars to transform the diesel school bus fleet to clean electric vehicles. Companies like Amazon, FedEx, Waste Management that runs garbage trucks through our neighborhoods every day, they're already using and committed to using more electric and hybrid vehicles in their fleets. Reason 4, state and local governments are moving forward. There is a lot less denial of climate change these days. We're just beyond denial for most people. Several states are starting to create cabinet-level positions on climate change. Massachusetts and California are 2 of them. 46 states and all the largest metropolitan areas in the country put their hands up for millions of dollars to develop comprehensive climate plans. This includes, as I said, the state of Indiana and Indianapolis. That planning will be happening over the next 2 years, and it requires states and cities to include opportunities for public input. The Indiana Department of Environmental Management has information about its grant on its website and has scheduled public meetings around the state for October. It is now October. The one for Indianapolis is on October 10th at 6 p.m. at the John Bonner Center over on East 10th Street. Some states are way far ahead with emission reduction programs. They're actually putting rules and programs in place. And they also are encouraging markets and, importantly, setting an example for the rest of the country. Reason number 5. Government can't do this alone. The private sector can't do this alone. We need people and institutions to be acting also. We have amazing people and organizations here in Indiana working on these issues. I was involved with Interfaith Power and Light when it got started in the state, and its current incarnation as Faith in Place is helping congregations all across the state with practical and, in many cases, money-saving projects that will reduce carbon emissions. Today, after the service, I encourage you to attend the Adult Forum to learn from Christine Glazer about how Faith in Place can provide all souls with many resources and opportunities to support our green sanctuary efforts. And tonight, you can join a watch party at 6 p.m. at Inglewood Christian Church to hear Leah Thomas, a leading voice in the environmental justice community, talk about ways to ensure the world we are building is rooted in caring for all people. And I understand that there will be carpooling if you want to go, and you meet here at 5. Other groups like Earth Charter Indiana, the Hoosier Environmental Council, the Nature Conservancy, and Keep Indianapolis Beautiful are working with communities and people all across the state on different aspects of the climate challenge, advocating for good policies, educating kids, preserving open space, planting trees, and a lot of other things. And we have heroes right here among us. We have Carrie Hamilton, who has put herself forward in elective office to advocate for climate change policy at the state level. We have Indra Frank, who with every aspect of her being, every aspect of her personal and professional life, embodies commitment to addressing climate change. We have Bruce Russell Jane, who has literally put his freedom on the line to draw attention in a very noisy way to the crisis that we're in. We have Ray Wilson from UUI, who has personally helped dozens of congregations, including ours, plan for more efficient energy use and greater investment in renewable energy. So I am finally, you'll be glad to hear, at my last reason. But it's a really important one. I am hopeful now because I know we have tackled what have seemed like insurmountable environmental issues before and done what people believed to be impossible. In the 1970s, the forests and waters around the world, and for us in the eastern US, were literally dying due to acidic rainfall that came from emissions from coal-fired power plants. For years, there was denial and conflict about whether anything could or should be done. People said it would crash the economy to require coal plants to control their emissions. Legislation was eventually passed, though, in 1990, and it turned out to cost less than half of what was predicted. Our economy continued to grow. We did not turn out the lights all across the country, and acid rain is now largely a thing of the past. We've fixed it. Another story that I think is so important is how the whole world came together to address the emissions that were causing a hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica. That's the protective layer of ozone that keeps solar radiation away from the Earth's surface. And you have to remember about ozone: good up high, bad nearby. We don't want it on the ground, but we want it up there. So once again, the science was clear, the implications were dire, and all the countries came together with a plan to reduce those harmful emissions. The plan has worked, and the hole in the ozone layer is getting smaller year after year after year. These are impossibly hard things to do, to get the entire world to get together to fix something like this. People need to hear these stories, need to see that it's been done and can be done. So as John read the poem from Emily Dickinson, she imagines hope as a little bird that dwells inside us, that sings and sings and sings and never asks for a crumb. Hope is essential if we're going to get through the day, the week, this life we have. But as you use, we know that hope isn't enough. You can't just count on hope. We must pay attention to what is going on around us and act. So, how do we do that? What should we do? We should do everything we can. We need to advocate in any relevant forum: city councils, state legislatures, Congress, boardrooms, governing boards of private organizations like All Souls, for changes that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions and help the world prepare for hotter temperatures. We need to vote. We need to make the best choices we personally can in our personal lives and in our work lives. Do what you can when you can in your household. Think about the businesses you support and what you invest in. If you have influence in your workplace, do what you can there too, and in other organizations that you are involved with. So I'm going to finish where I started with Pete Seeger. The key to the future of the world is finding the optimistic stories and letting them be known. Let's create those stories here at All Souls and let them be known. Thank you.
So Janet, thank you so much. You've given us a lot to think about, and I'm personally glad that this will be on All Souls' website in a week or so, and I can review what you said because you gave us an awful lot to think about. Thank you so much. Each week, we gather together to align our giving with our values. We support the mission and ministries of our congregation and share half of our weekly offering with an organization whose values align with ours. This week, we are donating to Faith in Place. This is an organization whose mission is to empower people of diverse faiths and spiritualities to be leaders in advancing environmental and racial justice. So to contribute, you can place a cash or check in the collection basket as it's passed around, or you can go to, if you're online, you go to allsoulsindy.org and you'll find the link that says Give to All Souls here. I think it's on the left side. And please indicate if your check is for a pledge or whether it's for Share the Plate. So thank you for your generosity in supporting the mission of All Souls and for your continued love for one another and for this world. Take this moment to take your gift. The offering will now be gratefully given and received. So we do have reasons to be hopeful and a charge to get to work. So let us end with the words that we began with, and let hope fuel us forward in the work. Again, the words by Emily Dickinson. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could have bashed the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. I invite you now to turn to hymn number 1064, Blue Boat Home, in your teal hymnal, and join in.
Low below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now. Never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, the making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful